The vibrant chaos of South Park Mall in Charlotte often served as a backdrop for the everyday dramas of adolescence. On this particular afternoon, it was the shoe aisle of a Dick's Sporting Goods that held the unfolding scene, a seemingly ordinary tableau of pre-teen life. 12-year-old Amaya Richardson, caught in the timeless ritual of trying on sneakers, chatted idly with her best friend, the easy camaraderie of youth making light of homework and the fervent desire for a fresh pair of Nikes. Her voice was light, unremarkable, until, as children often do, she uttered something that caused a subtle ripple in the casual hum of consumerism. "My mom's not picking me up until she's done at Fort Bragg," Amaya explained, flipping a shoebox lid shut with practiced ease. "She's in special forces, so sometimes her schedule's crazy." Her friend blinked, wide-eyed, the innocent curiosity of childhood momentarily pierced by a hint of awe. "Wait, your mom's in the army? Like, actually fighting?" Amaya nodded, the statement as natural to her as discussing her favorite breakfast cereal. "Yeah, she's Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson. She just got back from a mission overseas." It should have been a fleeting, innocent brag, the kind of casual boast children trade, a testament to familial pride. But then an unwelcome sound cleaved the air, sharp and dismissive. It wasn't the soft, amused chuckle of a casual observer. This was a pointed, cutting sound, meant to diminish and belittle. Standing a few feet away, seemingly lost in a rack of Under Armour hoodies, was Officer Colton Reeves. Off-duty and dressed in jeans and a Carolina Panthers t-shirt, his police badge clipped to his belt like a mere accessory, he looked every inch the weekend shopper. Yet, the laugh belonged to him, loud enough to draw the attention of other patrons. "Special Forces," Reeves scoffed, shaking his head with a condescending grin. "Come on, kid. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and I can tell you right now there's no way your mom is running around with the Green Berets. Especially not." He paused, his eyes narrowing with a weight that went beyond mere skepticism. "Especially not someone like her." The word itself stung, but the underlying tone, laden with unspoken assumptions, stung more deeply. Amaya's face flushed a fiery red, her lips pressing into a thin, defiant line. Around her, heads had turned, drawn by the sudden tension. A mother with a toddler in her cart lingered nearby, feigning interest in socks but clearly engrossed. A pair of teenagers whispered behind cupped hands. Amaya's friend leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Just ignore him. He doesn't know." But ignoring the man wasn't an option. The officer wasn't finished. Reeves chuckled again, the sound grating. "Look, I get it. Kids like to make up stories. My boy used to say his dad was Spider-Man. Same kind of thing. Cute, but not real." The scalding heat of embarrassment crawled up Amaya's neck, seizing her throat and silencing any words she might have mustered in defense of her mother. Her hands trembled as she shoved the shoebox back onto the shelf, the cardboard scraping loudly against the display, a small protest against the injustice. "Why would you say that in front of everybody?" her friend whispered nervously. Amaya swallowed hard, her voice barely a breath. "Because it's true." That quiet, steady defiance only provoked more laughter from Reeves. He tilted his head, addressing the small, accidental audience now pretending to browse nearby. "See, that's what I'm talking about. Cute kid making up a fantasy. Look, sweetheart, there's nothing wrong with wanting your mom to be a hero, but you don't have to invent fairy tales." Fairy tales. The word landed like a physical blow. Amaya's mother was no figment of imagination. She was flesh and blood, tougher and more resilient than anyone Amaya knew. A woman who could tuck her into bed one week and be halfway around the world the next, navigating the harsh realities of global security operations. Yet, standing under the unforgiving fluorescent lights of a sporting goods store, Amaya felt utterly powerless to prove it. Reeves, with his smug grin, knew it too. He savored his perceived victory. "Tell you what," he said, tapping his badge, a subtle assertion of his own authority. "If your mom's really special forces, maybe she should come by the station sometime. We could use a laugh." Amaya's chest tightened, a burning knot of indignation forming. She pictured her mom's calloused hands, hands that had carried weapons and comforted comrades. She saw the rows of gleaming medals displayed in their living room, each a testament to courage and sacrifice. She recalled the quiet authority with which her mother moved through bustling airports, a presence that commanded respect and made strangers instinctively step aside. Her mother had risked her life countless times for her country, facing threats far beyond the understanding of this sneering man. And here he was, tearing it all down with a smirk in front of a captive audience. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was a raw, defiant crack. "You don't know anything about her." The sentence hung in the air, a fragile challenge. Reeves's smile flickered for just a beat, a momentary crack in his arrogant facade, but he quickly recovered, clapping his hands together as if to dismiss the matter. "Sure, kid. Whatever you say." Around them, shoppers exchanged glances, some amused, some uncomfortable, but no one stepped in. No one offered a word of support. No one echoed, "She's telling the truth." The silence only amplified Amaya's humiliation, pressing down on her like an invisible weight. Her friend shifted uneasily. "Amaya, maybe we should just wait outside." But Amaya couldn't move. Her sneakers felt cemented to the linoleum floor. This wasn't just about personal embarrassment. It was about her mother, her truth, her profound sense of pride, all being mocked and diminished in front of strangers. The injustice made her chest burn. Still, she lowered her eyes to the floor tiles, a wave of helplessness washing over her. What could she, a mere child, possibly do? But what Amaya didn't know, as she silently wished for her mother's presence, was that Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson was already on her way. A resolute figure striding through the mall's sliding glass doors, dressed in her full, impeccably pressed uniform. The sporting goods store, once a space of casual commerce, now felt constricted, every corner teeming with unseen eyes, all focused on Amaya. She shifted her weight, hugging her arms around herself, but no gesture could shield her from the officer's relentless voice, which carried easily, bouncing off shelves stacked with backpacks and racks of sports jerseys. Officer Colton Reeves leaned against a display, exuding an air of leisure, as if this cruel charade were mere entertainment. "You know," he said with that half-smile that was more sneer than grin, "people don't realize what kind of training it takes to make it into special forces. Years of grueling work, combat deployments, the best of the best. It's not exactly the kind of job you hear about at PTA meetings." He laughed again, shaking his head, reinforcing his incredulity. "And you expect me to believe your mom is one of them?" The words twisted into Amaya's chest like a tightening knot. She wished she could explain the silent strength of her mother, the times she had been gone for months on missions in far-flung, often dangerous parts of the world. She longed to speak of the letters written in pencil, scrawled on fragile paper from places where secure communication was a luxury. But she couldn't. Not with him staring her down, not with strangers circling like vultures, awaiting the next act of the show. Her friend, Kane Torres, glanced nervously at the growing cluster of onlookers. "We should just go," she whispered again, her voice pleading. But Amaya shook her head. Her throat tightened, yet she forced the words out, low but firm. "I don't care if you believe me. My mom doesn't need your approval." That answer should have been the end of it, a child's final word. But Reeves was not a man to cede control, especially not to a child. He took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personally invasive, yet still loud enough for others to hear. "Listen, sweetheart. I know you want to feel proud, but making up stories isn't the way. People are going to laugh, and honestly, a little girl like you doesn't know what real sacrifice looks like." Amaya's ears burned. The tears she refused to let fall blurred the shelves in front of her. Kaylin put a hand on her sleeve, a gesture of comfort, but Amaya pulled away, her small fists clenched tightly at her sides. From across the aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered under his breath, Just let the kid talk, man. His voice, though, wasn't loud enough to carry, and Reeves ignored it entirely. Amaya swallowed, then spoke up again, her words shaking, yet steady enough to be heard. You're wrong about her. You're wrong about everything. That earned another laugh from Reeves, but this one was no longer merely amused. It was the laugh of someone utterly convinced of their victory, someone inviting shared triumph. He looked around the store, almost daring anyone to contradict him. Wrong, kid. I've worked side by side with real heroes. I've met soldiers. I've met the guys who actually go overseas, do the dangerous stuff, and trust me, they don't look like your mom. The last sentence landed heavier than anything else he'd said. Amaya froze, her face hot with a mixture of shame and searing fury. She knew exactly what he meant, the unspoken implication hanging heavy in the air, and so did everyone else listening. Kaylin gasped. That's not fair, she blurted out, her voice quivering with indignation. You don't even know her. Reeves turned his gaze on Kaylin, his grin spreading wider. And you do? He challenged. What? Did you two sit around swapping war stories? Please. I've been in uniform longer than you two have been alive. I think I know what's real and what's made up. Kaylin shrank back, but Amaya, though her hands trembled, stood her ground. You'll see. She's coming. The officer smirked. Sure she is. Maybe she'll parachute right through the skylight, huh? He chuckled, shaking his head as if the joke were too delicious to resist. Don't worry, kid. You'll learn. The world's tough. Better to face the truth now than keep living in make-believe. Shoppers whispered, some shaking their heads in silent disapproval, others quietly pulling out phones, their screens angled discreetly to record the scene. Amaya noticed a woman pretending to flip through yoga pants, her phone subtly pointed their way. A teenage boy near the checkout nudged his friend, pointing at the confrontation. The humiliation weighed on her like a heavy backpack, each passing second adding to the burden. For the first time, Amaya wished she hadn't said anything at all. Perhaps she should have kept quiet, kept her mom's extraordinary life private, as Nicole often asked her to. But the thought of Reeves's smug smirk, of everyone believing his cynical version instead of hers, made her chest burn anew. She wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand and stood taller, a fragile but unyielding column of defiance. You'll see, she repeated, firmer this time. The officer leaned back against the rack of hoodies, folding his arms, as if he'd just wrapped up a particularly satisfying case. We'll see, huh? He drawled, his smirk unwavering. All right then, I'll wait. The silence that followed his words was louder than the soft, piped-in music playing over the store's speakers. Every second stretched, the crowd restless but intensely curious, waiting to see if Amaya would finally break, if she'd shrink away in shame. She didn't. But while Amaya stood there, fighting back tears, her mother was indeed already walking past the food court, her boots striking the polished tile floor with a steady, purposeful rhythm, about to turn the corner and change everything. Amaya's heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She stayed planted in front of the shelves of sneakers, her feet glued, but her insides screamed for her to run, to disappear, to rewind the moment she had opened her mouth. If she had just said, "My mom's busy," none of this would have happened. Now, strangers stared at her as if she were the star of a show she never agreed to be in. Officer Colton Reeves stood like he was enjoying a slow afternoon comedy, rocking back on his heels, arms crossed, his smirk glued firmly in place. You're awfully quiet now, he prodded, starting to realize you might have stretched the truth a little. The words were a fresh stab, but Amaya, though keeping her eyes down, felt his voice drag her back up every time. She could almost hear the whispers circling. Why is he going after her like that? Someone muttered from a few aisles over. Maybe the kid really did make it up, another voice answered, their judgment swift and unyielding. Low, but not low enough. Kane tugged at her sleeve again, her voice a desperate plea. Amaya, please. Let's just wait for your mom outside. You don't have to keep talking to him. But Amaya's chest burned, a furious mix of anger and shame. "I'm not lying," she whispered, mostly to herself, a desperate affirmation of her truth. Reeves leaned closer, his voice a notch lower now, feigning concern. "Look, I'm trying to save you from yourself. You run around telling stories like this, and people are going to laugh. Not everyone's going to be nice about it. You're better off sticking to the truth. Your mom works hard. She takes care of you. That's enough. No need to pretend she's some kind of war hero." Her fingernails dug into her palms, the word pretend echoing in her head. Pretend. As if the nights she cried into her pillow, missing her mom, were imaginary. As if the medals in the shadow box on their wall were souvenirs from a gift shop. For the first time, doubt, insidious and chilling, slipped in. Not because she questioned her mother, but because she questioned herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken so casually. Maybe it was her fault strangers now thought her mother's life was a joke. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it stung. Callan whispered, "He doesn't matter. You know what's true." But it didn't feel like that. Truth didn't matter when no one believed you. Reeves shifted his weight, glancing around the store like a performer with an audience to keep entertained. "Tell you what," he said, almost chuckling. "If your mom walks in here in uniform, I'll buy you those sneakers myself." He gestured toward the wall of shoes. "But until then, maybe keep the fairy tales at home." Fairy tales again. Her vision blurred, but she refused to blink, refusing him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby, holding a basket of clearance shirts, finally spoke up. "She's just a kid," she said firmly, her voice a gentle protest. Reeves turned his head slowly, locking eyes with the woman. "And I'm just telling her the truth. Better she hears it now than keeps embarrassing herself." The woman frowned, but looked away, shaking her head. No one else said a word. Amaya's stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to stand and watch instead of affirming her truth? Her mother always told her, "Courage isn't loud, Amaya. Sometimes it's just standing tall when you want to shrink." But standing tall felt impossible when the floor itself seemed to push her down. She pressed her lips together until they hurt. "You'll see," she whispered again, her voice trembling, but imbued with a growing resolve. Reeves sighed, feigning boredom. "Kid, I've heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Believe me, I've heard every story, and every time it's the same thing. Kids wanting to feel special. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth doesn't need defending." His words dug deep, because wasn't that exactly what she was doing? Defending? If the truth was so obvious, why did she feel like she was losing? Kaylin stepped between them, her small frame almost shaking. "You're being mean. She's not lying." Reeves arched a brow. "And how do you know?" "Because I've seen pictures," Kaylin snapped. "Her mom's in uniform. She's got medals. She stopped, realizing the word sounded thin against his ingrained disbelief. Reeves chuckled under his breath. "Pictures? Anyone can buy a uniform at an army surplus store. Doesn't make it real." Amaya clenched her jaw. She hated that he had an answer for everything, hated that every word he spoke made the crowd lean a little closer, as if he were narrating the version that simply made more sense. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straighter. "You'll see," she repeated for the third time, the words coming out stronger, steadier. Reeves tilted his head, smiling like a man indulging a child. "All right, I'm waiting." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were just watching, a collective, silent expectation. The air thickened, every second dragging like an hour. Amaya could barely breathe, her thoughts racing, her palms slick with sweat. And then, just faintly, she heard it. The sound of boots against tile, steady and certain, approaching with an unmistakable rhythm. But what Amaya didn't realize yet was that her mom's arrival wouldn't just end the laughter. It would flip the entire store, and perhaps the perspectives within it, on its head. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance hissed open, letting in a burst of chatter and footsteps from the food court. Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson strode through, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Her camouflage uniform was sharp, meticulously pressed, the patches on her sleeve catching the overhead light, her beret tucked neatly under one arm. She had just left a ceremony at Fort Bragg, an institution steeped in the history of elite military operations, and had decided to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She hadn't expected to walk into a public spectacle. From across the store, Amaya caught sight of her instantly. Relief surged through her chest so quickly it almost knocked the breath away. Her heart leaped, but so did a fresh wave of fear, for now her mother was about to witness everything. Nicole's boots hit the polished tile in a rhythm that did not waver, her gait one of quiet power and precision. Her gaze scanned the racks of athletic wear, the line of shoppers, then stopped on the small, tense cluster gathered near the sneaker aisle. Her daughter, face flushed with emotion, fists balled at her sides. Beside her, Kaylin, looking both scared and fiercely protective. And standing across from them, Officer Reeves, leaning back as if he owned the space, an air of entitled amusement still clinging to him. Nicole's jaw set, a subtle but unmistakable sign of rising displeasure. She crossed the aisle, her uniform and bearing drawing eyes as shoppers instinctively stepped aside, recognizing an authority that transcended the civilian space. Amaya's throat went dry. She wanted to run into her mom's arms, to bury her face and let the day's indignity wash away, but something about the way Nicole moved, focused, purposeful, radiating an unshakable resolve, made her stay frozen. Reeves spotted her too. At first his grin didn't fade. He assumed she was just another parent, perhaps an inconvenience, arriving to pick up her child. But as Nicole came closer, her rank insignia, the intricate braids and stars that spoke volumes of 2 decades of service and leadership became impossible to miss. His smirk faltered, if only for a half second, before he caught himself and attempted to reassert his casual disdain. "Mom!" Amaya's voice cracked, louder than she meant, but the sheer relief in it silenced even the shoppers who had been whispering. Nicole stopped directly beside her daughter, her hand resting lightly but firmly on Amaya's shoulder. The tension that had coiled in Amaya's body melted just a little under the familiar, comforting touch. "What's going on?" Nicole asked, her voice calm, yet carrying a resonance that demanded attention. Reeves straightened, shifting his weight, then forced a polite, almost practiced smile. "Evening, ma'am. Just clearing up a misunderstanding." Nicole's eyes flicked from Reeves to the circle of strangers, then back to her daughter, her gaze a silent question. Amaya's lips trembled. He said you couldn't be who you are. That I made it up." The words tumbled out, a mix of lingering shame and desperate vindication. Nicole didn't respond immediately. She simply studied Reeves, her silence stretching just long enough for him to feel the implicit challenge, the weight of her scrutiny. Reeves gave a chuckle that sounded more nervous this time, less arrogant. "Kids, you know how they are. Big imaginations. I was just having a little fun with her." Nicole's voice stayed even, yet it cut clean, precise as a surgeon's blade. "You mocked my daughter in front of strangers and called her a liar." The man's shoulders stiffened, his pretense of casual banter crumbling. "Now, hold on. I didn't call her that. I just said—" Nicole interrupted, her voice unwavering. "And you decided it was a joke. Tell me, officer." The title, officer, was delivered with a pointed emphasis, a deliberate reminder of his professional conduct and its public implications. "What exactly made it so funny?" Reeves's face tightened, a telltale sign of discomfort. A couple of the shoppers glanced at one another, surprised she knew his occupation, the glint of his badge now seeming less like an accessory and more like an indictment. He cleared his throat. "Look, Sergeant Major, with all due respect." Nicole raised a hand, a small, authoritative gesture that halted him mid-sentence. Respect doesn't begin with laughter at a child. The store had gone utterly silent. Even the music overhead seemed to quiet, as if the very air itself paused to listen to this unexpected confrontation. Amaya stood taller now, the crushing weight of humiliation lifting, replaced by a surging tide of pride as her mother's powerful presence filled the space. Kaylin's eyes widened, almost in awe of Nicole's composed yet potent authority. Reeves shifted again, his practiced confidence draining by degrees, his bravado eroding under Nicole's steady gaze. "I didn't mean anything by it, just thought it was unusual, that's all." Nicole tilted her head, a gesture of thoughtful consideration that nonetheless carried immense power. "Unusual doesn't mean impossible. It means you've never seen it. And maybe the problem is less about me being here and more about you never imagining I could be." Her voice wasn't raised, but the words struck harder than any shout, resonating with a deeper truth about preconceived notions and societal blind spots. Amaya looked up at her mother, pride swelling inside her chest, a feeling so potent it almost overwhelmed the lingering fear. She wanted Reeves to say something now, to try and offer another flimsy excuse, but he didn't. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again, his smirk finally, completely gone. The woman with the clearance basket whispered to the person beside her, "She's the real thing." The teenage boy at the checkout muttered, "No way, that's legit." And Amaya, for the first time that afternoon, breathed without feeling like the whole world was against her. Nicole squeezed her daughter's shoulder lightly, a silent affirmation of her belief, before turning back to Reeves. "Next time, before you laugh at a child, remember that truth doesn't need your permission to exist." Reeves's throat bobbed. He gave a stiff, almost involuntary nod, his earlier bravado scattered like dust in the wind. But what Reeves didn't realize was that the confrontation had only just begun. Nicole, a veteran of far greater battles, was not finished making her point. The air in the store felt heavy, thick with the unsaid. No one spoke. No one shuffled racks or pretended to browse. Every shopper within earshot had turned toward the sneaker aisle, their eyes bouncing between the officer's stiff, uncomfortable stance and the uniformed woman standing firm, unwavering, beside her daughter. Nicole didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Authority carried in her posture, in the steady way she met Reeves's gaze. "Officer Reeves," she said evenly, glancing pointedly at his badge. "I don't know you. You don't know me. Yet you saw fit to laugh at my daughter, to dismiss her in front of strangers. Why?" Reeves licked his lips, the confidence he'd worn so easily minutes ago now visibly slipping away, replaced by a growing unease. "Look, Sergeant Major, I wasn't trying to—" Her tone sharpened, but only slightly, her patience wearing thin. "Why mock a child who spoke the truth?" He shifted his weight, trying to pull back some semblance of control, to regain the upper hand he believed was his by default. "It wasn't like that. I just thought she was exaggerating. Kids do that." Nicole studied him, her gaze unblinking, unwavering. Exaggerating is saying, "Your mom makes the best cookies in the world." Exaggerating is telling your friends you can run faster than a car. My daughter didn't exaggerate. She told you who I am. And instead of listening, instead of acknowledging a truth that might challenge your limited worldview, you laughed. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. The woman with the clearance basket set it down, her arms crossed now, clearly invested, her initial embarrassment gone, replaced by quiet solidarity. Reeves forced out a laugh, but it sounded thin, unconvincing. "All right, maybe I shouldn't have laughed, but you've got to understand, it caught me off guard. I mean, special forces." Nicole cut in again, her voice piercing through his feeble defense. "What about special forces caught you off guard? That my daughter knows the term, or that she used it to describe me?" He hesitated, a telling pause that spoke volumes. The uncomfortable silence hung in the air, a tacit admission of his unspoken bias. Nicole leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to force him to lean closer if he wanted to hear, to truly absorb her words. You assumed because I'm a woman, because I'm black, you couldn't imagine someone like me holding that title, so you mocked my daughter to protect your own outdated assumptions. Reeves swallowed hard. His eyes darted to the onlookers, realizing he wasn't just answering her, but was being judged by everyone present. His casual prejudices now laid bare for public scrutiny. Kaylin stepped closer to Amaya, whispering, "He looks nervous." Amaya whispered back, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Good." Reeves drew in a slow, ragged breath, trying desperately to find stable footing, to reclaim any shred of his shattered authority. "I never said anything about race. I never said anything about women. You're putting words in my mouth." Nicole straightened, her expression calm, her resolve unwavering. "You didn't have to say it. Your laugh said it for you." A few people in the crowd nodded faintly, a silent chorus of agreement. A man near the registers muttered, "She's right." Reeves's jaw flexed, his smirk gone completely now, replaced by a defensive scowl. "Fine. Maybe I came across wrong. I'll admit that. But I didn't mean harm." Nicole glanced down at Amaya, then back at him, her gaze holding him accountable. Intent doesn't erase impact. She stood here while a grown man with a badge turned her truth into entertainment. Do you have any idea how small that can make a child feel? Amaya felt her chest tighten, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was from profound pride, a deep sense of vindication. Her mom was articulating everything she couldn't, giving voice to the voiceless. The silence stretched again, the officer shifting his weight, clearly aware of every phone camera angled his way now, of every pair of eyes fixed on his discomfort. Nicole let the pause hang, letting the weight of her words settle, before continuing. "I've served my country for 22 years. I've led soldiers through terrain you'll never see, made decisions that carried life and death consequences. I wear this uniform because I earned it. Every stripe, every insignia, every bit of respect it commands. And yet," her voice deepened, a quiet sorrow mixing with her strength, "the hardest battle I often fight is right here, convincing people like you that my existence, my capabilities, are not a joke." The words hit like steel wrapped in velvet, powerful and cutting. Reeves's face paled. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. His arguments dried up, his preconceived notions shattered. Nicole turned slightly, addressing not just him, but the entire store, expanding the lesson beyond the personal. "This isn't about me alone. It's about what happens when someone decides their assumptions matter more than the truth. It's about the societal cost when we allow prejudice to dictate what we believe is possible. My daughter shouldn't have to defend my career to strangers. She shouldn't have to stand here in tears because a man couldn't imagine her words being real." A quiet clap broke the silence. The woman with the clearance basket started it, then stopped, embarrassed, but the gesture had already left its indelible mark, a spark of public approval. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, his bravado long gone, his demeanor utterly deflated. "All right, point taken." Nicole studied him one last time, her gaze unwavering, then spoke quietly enough that only he and Amaya could clearly hear. "Next time, remember that respect costs you nothing, but its absence costs others everything." Amaya looked up at her mother, her chest swelling with a pride that pushed out every last vestige of the shame she'd carried. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she felt steady again, anchored by her mother's unwavering strength. But even as Reeves tried to retreat, to escape the searing spotlight of Nicole's truth, the eyes of the crowd weren't finished with him. They wanted more than an uneasy apology, a mumbled capitulation. And Nicole, a master of strategy and discipline, wasn't done teaching the lesson. Officer Reeves shifted uncomfortably, his arms crossing over his chest as if he wanted to fold in on himself and vanish. The crowd wasn't dispersing. If anything, it was growing. People from other aisles drifted closer, drawn by the lingering tension, by the extraordinary sight of a decorated soldier standing toe-to-toe with a police officer who had started something he could no longer control. Nicole didn't move. She held her ground, one hand still resting on Amaya's shoulder, her presence steady as a stone. The contrast was stark. Reeves fidgeting, a picture of discomfort and defeat. Nicole calm, composed, unyielding, a testament to years of training that transcended physical combat into mental and moral fortitude. "You think this is done," she said softly, her voice carrying an unspoken warning. "But it isn't. Not until you understand what you did here." Reeves forced out a weak, desperate laugh, hoping to mask his deep discomfort. "Look, Sergeant Major, I said I was wrong. What else do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry if I embarrassed your kid. That good enough?" The apology was hollow, thrown out like spare change, devoid of genuine remorse. A few people in the crowd murmured disapproval, the quiet sounds amplifying his insincerity. Nicole's eyes never wavered. "No, because that wasn't an apology. That was you trying to save face. An apology is not about you. It's about the person you harmed. My daughter stood here while you laughed at her, while you diminished her truth. She believed in me so much that she proudly told the truth, and you crushed it under your heel. If you want to apologize, you look at her, not at me." The weight of the moment pressed down on Reeves, demanding genuine contrition. He glanced at Amaya, who stared back at him, her lips pressed tight, eyes wet but unflinching, a small, fierce sentinel of her truth. The officer shifted again, clearly uncomfortable with the silence that demanded more from him. Finally, he muttered, almost inaudibly, "Sorry, kid." Nicole arched a brow, a silent command for something more. "Try again." This time, the murmur of agreement from the crowd was louder, a collective nudge for him to do better. Reeves's face flushed crimson. His shoulders sagged under the collective gaze of strangers who expected him to rise to the moment, to demonstrate a humanity he had previously withheld. He cleared his throat and spoke louder, his voice strained but audible. "Amaya, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed at you. I shouldn't have said what I said. You told the truth and I didn't believe you. That was wrong." Amaya's chest swelled. For once, she didn't feel like shrinking. She held his gaze for a second longer, a silent acknowledgement of his forced admission, then looked up at her mom. Nicole gave the slightest nod, a gesture of reassurance, of lessons absorbed. Reeves exhaled as if hoping that would finally end things. But Nicole wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying clearly, drawing everyone into the deeper implications of the moment. "This isn't just about one man and one child. This is about how easy it is to dismiss someone when their story doesn't match what you expect, when their identity challenges your comfort. My daughter's truth was simple, but instead of listening, it was easier to assume she was lying, to reduce her to a fairy tale. How many times does that happen? How many times do kids grow up thinking their voices don't matter because someone with power decided to laugh instead of listen?" The words landed like stones dropped in water, sending ripples of understanding and uncomfortable recognition through the group of shoppers. Heads nodded. Some looked uneasy, not because Nicole was wrong, but because they recognized how many times they'd seen something similar and stayed silent, complicit in the erosion of another's truth. Kane squeezed Amaya's hand, whispering, "She's amazing." Nicole looked down at her daughter, her gaze full of love and pride. "Amaya, you never have to be ashamed of telling the truth. Not when it's about me, not about anything. If someone can't handle it, that's their weakness, not yours." Tears threatened at the corners of Amaya's eyes, but this time, they weren't from humiliation. They were from relief, from vindication, from an overwhelming sense of pride in her mother. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, clearly wanting the ground to swallow him whole. He muttered, "I already said I was sorry." Nicole looked at him one last time, her gaze unwavering. "Then live like it. Next time you meet a child with pride in their voice, don't strip it away. Let them keep it. Because once you take that from a kid, once you undermine their self-worth and belief in truth, it's not so easily given back." The silence that followed was thick, pregnant with the weight of her words. Then, almost unexpectedly, a young man near the checkout counter clapped once. Another joined. Within seconds, scattered applause, tentative at first, then steady and supportive, filled the store. Not loud, not rowdy, but a gentle affirmation of Nicole's powerful stand. Reeves's face burned crimson, a vivid mark of his public shaming. He gave a curt nod, a defeated acknowledgement, and stepped back, retreating toward the exit, no longer the center of attention, but the man who'd been schooled in front of strangers. Amaya turned to her mom, her voice small but steady, brimming with gratitude. "Thank you." Nicole bent down slightly so her face was level with her daughter's, her eyes twinkling with genuine emotion. "No, Amaya. Thank you for telling the truth when it wasn't easy. That's braver than anything I've ever done in uniform, for it speaks to the very foundation of integrity." The words sank deep, settling in Amaya's heart like newly forged armor. For the first time that day, she truly believed it. But as the crowd slowly dispersed, returning to the routines of shopping, Amaya realized something else. The profound lesson wasn't just for Reeves. It was for everyone watching, including her. The store began to quiet again, though the air still buzzed with the lingering energy of what had just taken place. A few shoppers lingered, pretending to look at shelves, but sneaking glances at Nicole and her daughter, their expressions now softened, respectful. The tension that had filled the space was gone, replaced with something heavier, something thoughtful, a collective contemplation of truth, prejudice, and courage. Amaya stood taller beside her mother, still holding Kaylin's hand, a tangible link of shared experience. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she didn't feel small. She felt seen, acknowledged, valued. The shame that had burned her cheeks only minutes earlier had dissolved, replaced by a deep, resonant pride. Nicole glanced down at her. "You all right?" Amaya nodded. "Yeah, I hate that it happened." Nicole's hand rested on her daughter's shoulder, a reassuring weight. "I know, but sometimes moments like this teach us more than 100 quiet days ever could. You don't forget them, and neither does anyone who watched. These are the moments that forge character, that carve lessons into the collective memory." Kane looked up at Nicole, her eyes wide with admiration. "You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you." Nicole gave a small smile, acknowledging the power of her message. "I wasn't just talking to him. I was talking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth doesn't matter, especially when it challenges their comfort." A man in a baseball cap, the same one who had muttered earlier, finally spoke up, louder this time, his voice thick with genuine appreciation. "Ma'am, thank you. I've got a daughter myself. She's 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage." Nicole nodded once, the simple gesture carrying immense weight, a testament to shared values and the unspoken bonds of parenthood. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about speaking anyway, about standing firm when fear tries to silence you. Amaya's chest swelled. Hearing those words, spoken so powerfully in front of strangers, made her feel like her mother's pride in her was carved into the very air. As the remaining shoppers began to drift away, their thoughts undoubtedly lingering on the scene, a woman paused near Nicole. She lowered her voice but spoke clearly enough for Amaya to hear. "Thank you for your service, and thank you for showing him he was wrong." Nicole's gaze softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability amidst her strength. "We all serve in our own ways. Today, my daughter served by standing tall, by refusing to let her truth be diminished. That's something worth respecting, worth defending. The woman smiled and walked off, leaving Nicole and Amaya standing by the sneakers that suddenly didn't seem so important anymore. Amaya turned to her mom, a lingering question in her eyes. Did I make it worse by saying it? Nicole shook her head, a gentle, definitive gesture. You made it better. You didn't hide who I am. You spoke the truth even when people laughed. That takes more strength than some adults ever learn, more courage than many can ever muster. For a moment, Amaya felt the last vestiges of the day's heavy weight lift off her. She could breathe again, truly breathe. Kaylin gave her a quick squeeze, a silent affirmation of their shared triumph. Told you he was wrong. Amaya laughed softly, wiping away the last of her tears. Yeah, you did. They walked toward the exit together, Nicole's boots steady against the tile, their rhythm a testament to her unwavering spirit. People still glanced at them, but not with ridicule now, with something closer to admiration, respect, and a newfound understanding. As they stepped out into the wider mall, Amaya's mind replayed the scene. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of doubt, and then her mom's voice, clear and strong, cutting through all of it like a beacon of truth. She realized that even though it had been one of the hardest moments of her young life, it had also been one of the most important, a crucible that had tested her resolve and affirmed her identity. Nicole slowed her stride and bent slightly toward her daughter, her voice a soft, unforgettable whisper. Amaya, remember this. People will doubt you. They'll laugh, dismiss you, try to make you smaller. But you never let them take your truth. Not for me, not for anyone. Promise me that. Amaya looked up at her mom, eyes shining with a fresh resolve, the promise a silent vow forged in the heart of a challenging afternoon. I promise. Nicole kissed the top of her daughter's head, the simple gesture stronger and more meaningful than any speech. By the time they reached the car, Amaya felt lighter, her spirit renewed. She still carried the memory of Reeves's smirk, but it no longer weighed her down. Instead, it reminded her of something else, how quickly a person's assumptions can crumble when faced with the undeniable power of truth. And as the car doors shut and the mall disappeared behind them, Amaya leaned back against the seat, her hand still gripping Kaylin's, and thought, with a quiet, fierce certainty, I'll never be embarrassed about Mom again. Because that day, in a crowded store under bright fluorescent lights, she had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Never let anyone laugh you out of your own truth, out of your own dignity. And maybe, just maybe, the people who had witnessed it learned something too. That respect costs nothing, but withholding it can scar someone deeply, leaving wounds that take far longer to heal than the few minutes it takes to utter an apology. Nicole started the car, glanced in the rearview mirror, and said softly, You girls ready to head home? Amaya smiled for the first time since the ordeal began, a genuine, joyful expression. Yeah, let's go home. The mall faded into the distance, but the lesson stayed, a profound echo. And for everyone who heard it, whether they admitted it out loud or not, it would linger long after the sound of Nicole's boots had faded from the tile floor, a testament to the enduring power of courage and truth.